Hello and welcome to another edition of Mayday, a show about the show. I'm your host, Trevor May, 10-year big leaguer, zero-time all-star. And I'm here to talk to you about a bunch of news that has happened in the baseball world, not just Major League Baseball, but baseball as a whole. Big fun show for you this week. I mean, depends on what your definition of fun is, but we will get into all of that. I hope you guys are all doing really well. It is spring training. The sun has come out in more than one place, I've heard. And producer DK also told me that he got to wear shorts today for the first time this year. So big deal. A lot of positivity that comes with the sun. We can all use that from time to time. Today's show, we are going to be talking about in-game decisions. Are they changing? And are the managers going to take over more of that workload in Major League Baseball? The MLBPA director resigns for a couple of reasons, which we will get into. We're going to talk about some other spring training storylines, and I'll give you my top 10 off seasons by team. Let's just jump right in to the show. All right. It is February 18th. We are now we have fully committed to spring training. Everybody is reported. Everybody is working out. And that, you know what that means? That means the media, myself included, is starting to figure out what some of the main storylines or some of the main changes from this year as opposed to last year are going to be. And one of the big ones is how decisions are made. So let's get into our first subject right now. In-game decisions, let's talk about it. Because there was recently a couple stories written or interviews given and questions asked of players that made me realize how a lot of the in-game decisions might change most drastically this year, more so than any year in recent history. Though we do know a lot of rule changes happen all the time in baseball, especially Major League Baseball, especially in recent years. But like a lot of the in-game decision-making kind of lags behind that. Like, how do we make decisions based on these rule changes? And today, in-game decision-making is going to be focused a lot around how the catchers make decisions, often called the quarterback of the baseball team. The catcher is the one that gives the signs about bunt plays, it gives the signs about situational stuff, and also manages the pitcher and works with the pitcher on the game plan for facing other hitters. So not only do they have to be ready to play defense at a very high level, they also have to understand how the pitcher is going to get hitters out. And they also have to hit, right? So there's a lot on their plate, and the two stories that in question are going to relate to that. Let's start with the first conversation that was had was with starting pitcher Chris Sale of the Atlanta Braves about the brand new automated balls and strikes challenge system, or the ABS for short. It is going to be live this year, guaranteed. It's happening. We saw it tested in spring training last year. It is going to be live in games this year. There will be only a handful. I believe it's 3 challenges per team. And if you are right, and by tapping your helmet, the hitter can do it, and the catcher can do it, and the pitcher can do it. If any one of those 3 guys challenges it, then it's wherever the call, ball or strike, is going to flip towards whatever one is advantageous to the hitter. So like no hitter is going to be like, that's a strike, nah, that's a ball, nah, that's a strike. Like they're not going to ask for a strike, they're going to ask for a ball. So anyone can do it. You have a finite number. If you get it right, you can retain that challenge. If you get it wrong, you lose it. Very similar to instant replays and things of that nature. So they're going along those lines. So Chris Sale was asked, would he ever use it? Well, he says he won't. Now remember, the things that are so interesting about this are guys like Chris Sale, who is a longtime veteran, arguably a Hall of Fame pitcher, right? He's going to be asked, are you going to use this? Can you use this to your advantage? We saw Max Scherzer, when they came out with the pitch clock, trying to find ways to make the pitch clock work to his advantage. So it bodes to reason that you would ask Chris Sale, do you feel confident that you'll be able to use this challenge system to benefit yourself as a pitcher? the interesting questions we've had about the ABS is who is going to be allowed to basically have autonomy just to do it whenever they want, and who isn't? And then how is each team's strategy going to differ? Because now there is strategy around the ABS. How is each team going to make decisions about how these things are used? And is it going to become a priority to end the game without any challenges? Just so you leave all stones unturned, are we going to see a bunch of like unused challenges used at the end of the game just to see if you can steal a strike here or there or whatever? Similarly to how you try to use your challenges, try to use them. If there's anything questionable, you try to use them at the end of the game no matter what. It makes sense. Is that what's going to happen? So those are the questions around it. And Mr. Sale, I think, gave us some interesting insight into how these things might be used, especially for a guy of his caliber, a guy who you would assume has an automated green light to do whatever he wants, right? So here's a quote from him. From the article of MLB.com, he said, quote, "I'm not an umpire. That's their job," Sale said. "I'm the starting pitcher. I have never called balls and strikes in my life." Now, at first glance, you look at that quote, you're like, okay, is this a Sale has had in his past he no qualms with being vocal about things he didn't like. And it sounds like that might be something he is saying. But as he continues, you realize very quickly that he's not just saying, oh, the ABS is stupid. Why can't we just use the umpires like we always have? What he's trying to say is he is very confident out there. So later he says, no, it's not because I don't like it. It's because I'm confident almost to a fault when I'm pitching. And I'm also very emotional. And I think I'll get greedy. And what I'll do is I'll think everything is a strike. And I might take away challenges that we need as a group just because of my own ego. And he knows that about himself. And he's a starting pitcher, so he's going to be pitching in the front part of the game. You might need challenges more at the end, okay? He also said something that resonated a lot with me because I experienced the same thing in 21 and 22 playing with the Mets. I got what was called Tomas Nido'd a lot, which was, Tomas Nido is a good friend of mine and also a phenomenal receiver or a framer of pitches. He was not only fooling the umpire, he was fooling me a lot. So like I would get riled up, I'd get mad at the guy behind the plate, I'd be like, where's that, whatever. And in reality, Nito's just like pulling the wool over my eyes and something 6 inches outside of the plate. Looks like a strike and I'm mad about it. Sale says, these guys behind Murph and Baldwin, they're both very good at receiving and they get me a lot. So now I don't even trust my own eyes as it stands. I don't want to waste any challenges. I am going to put that power in the hands of the catcher because they are the ones that both see the pitch the best, right? They're following along with the flow of the game the best, and they know the umpire the best, and they know what this umpire has, like what spots they might struggle to see and where you're more likely to, most likely a spot that they're most likely to get it wrong, so maybe they're more confident in calling their challenges. So he said, I'm going to defer to the catcher, which is exactly what I would have done as well. And I think that a lot of veteran guys are going to do because that catcher-pitcher relationship is supposed to be ironclad as it is. And that's just another thing that you would rely on them to do. So I'm very interested to see how this plays out in real time. Now, our second story continues to kind of check or talk about the role that a catcher is going to play in making on-field decisions. Because if we're giving them ABS responsibilities on top of pitch clock and on top of knowing the scouting report and on top of having to know all the bump plays and on top of having to know how they're going to be pitched when they're trying to hit, that seems like a lot, especially when there's now a timer going every single time where shaking can't happen. You can't really figure things out in real time. You have to have this stuff really, really ironed out before the game starts. There's a lot for catchers to have to worry about. So the second story that came out recently was, we talk about him a lot. It's actually crazy how much we talked about this gentleman, Tony Vitello, the new manager for the San Francisco Giants in 6 days of spring training, but here we are once again. It has been mentioned that he might be open to calling pitches from the dugout in Major League Baseball. Now, if you don't remember, Tony Vitello is the first ever manager to come directly from collegiate baseball as a manager to the manager role. The first ever coach to do it was pitching coach Wes Johnson, my pitching coach with the Twins in 2019. I recently got to talk to him about it too. That video is coming out on my YouTube channel tomorrow. You should check it out, or you could go over to the Substack and watch it right now if you want. But it is a very interesting, I think, situation happening where one of our main stories that we talked about last week was, what's this guy going to do and how is he going to change the way that the Giants operate moving forward, especially with a guy like Buster Posey, who is a pretty old school dude, who is a very likely going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer as his president of baseball operations. But when asked, he talked about how much he called pitches for his pitchers in college, 85% of the time, but the catcher over time was able to kind of take over a lot of the stuff. You earn the opportunity to do it. Now, there's a lot going on here. We talked about it last year as well. The Marlins tested it for 9 games, the last 9 games of the season last year, calling a lot of the pitches from the dugout, especially with a rookie catcher behind the plate and so a lot of rookie pitchers on the mound. This is a way to help them learn. It's a different beast up in the major leagues. The amount of information is different. The way that you're approaching hitters is different. Like learning that on the fly, you either have to commit to just being not very good at it a while and just kind of throwing them in the deep end and watching them try to learn to swim. That's what happened to me. Or you can help guide that situation. There's a lot of nuance here. In this article, talked to a lot of different people, a lot of different managers with different takes on it. And we're going to get into it in just a second. But to harken back to the Sale conversation, we are going to see a very interesting funneling of decisions to the catcher, both from the dugout and possibly from the pitcher, because of the new systems put in play and the new way of approaching making good pitch decisions throughout a game. So this is really interesting to me, and this is what Vitello said when he was asked. Or here's what Vitello said in a quote from Andrew Baggerly's article in The Athletic, this article that we see here. It says, "There's a lot of guys that were not happy with last year, how it went." Vitello said, this is a mutually exclusive year, but the past does have an influence. And I think some of these guys are using last year's frustration, whether they are in the minor leagues or at the big league level, as motivation to be better prepared and be a little hungrier this year. I think there's an openness to trying new things. That's an interesting way to phrase it. I think that what he is trying to hedge here is these guys are big leaguers. They have earned the right to make their own decisions, and it's kind of part of the game, is knowing how to do your job really, really well. Taking that out of your hands feels a little bit like you're not being treated like an adult. And so he knows that's not going to be popular right away, and it needs to be something he's into. So well played, very political answer there. But let's continue with the quote. "I don't think it's going to be a hard line rule," Vitello continued. "Patrick Bailey is who he is, and the flow of the game is crucial. It'll be case by case, and it's something that will roll through in spring training. But if we're going to put me on the spot, I'd say occasionally, yeah, we'll do it." So, in no uncertain terms, Tony Vitello has said that he will call some number of pitches from him or the pitching coach or the assistant pitching coach or someone who's designated to do it. Very interesting, which raises a whole bunch of questions for me. Like, is shaking allowed? Is it going to be similar to ABS? Are we going to give certain guys the green light to shake whenever? Are we going to have certain situations or certain buckets of situations where you shouldn't shake and we need to be on the same page here? When are we going to defer just the pitcher and catcher relationship? When are these things going to happen? And so there's a lot of arguments made for and against maybe the downsides or maybe the upsides of doing this in the major leagues. And these conclusions were come to by talking to a lot of the managers around the league about this specific thing. So let's talk a little bit about the arguments for, okay? Here's 6 reasons why this could be a good thing, at least in terms of performance on the field, okay? The dugout has a superior data access for optimizing the pitch selection. Basically, you come up with your game plan, then the dugout can actually reference the game plan in real time. Like, you can't do that out there. Pitchers, they have their little cards, but like, you're trying to remember stuff. If you can help with that, or at least put the bumpers on and be like, hey, remember, this is what we talked about. You can find a way to communicate to the catcher. I think that's an aggregate positive. It frees the young bat first catchers to focus on hitting mostly, not to worry so much about catching. Don't like that. Catching is part of your job. Most of the time, it's the biggest part of your job. And I think that's dangerous if you're saying, hey, we're putting pressure on to improve in a certain game. part of your game you do. Like, I think we've gotten so optimized in what guys do well that sometimes we pigeonhole them into getting better. Like, guys who aren't great defensively can become defensively, but can become very good defensively. But if we never put any sort of stakes on them getting better at catching, they're not going to. It's just human nature. And so if we do that when they're young, they may never develop into the player they could have been because they just thought they didn't have to. We don't need to specialize as soon as they get to the big leagues. I don't really agree with that one. Number 3, catchers are already cognitively overloaded with recent rule changes. I agree with this one. The speed. Pitch clock makes it so you can only shake so many times. If you're trying to remember things and then push the right buttons and you're young and you don't really know the guy and whatever, we can help with that at the beginning until you get into the flow of things. I totally understand that. I would have appreciated that, I think, a little bit in my last year with the A's in the first year of the pitch clock. It keeps defensively limited catching prospects viable. Again, you got to be able to catch. I don't know. Like, I think alleviating the range of your ability to catch the ball and be a good catcher, like, I just think the elite guys show a propensity to do all the things well, and saying, hey, you don't have to be elite stunts a guy's opportunity. I like the idea that any player can come up and develop into something amazing if they find things that click. But if they just say, okay, I don't have to do that, or I don't have to do that, and this is my very narrow lane, then what happens when the team that has them only in that narrow lane, you need to go somewhere else, they don't know how to do the other stuff? It hurts that person's career. And that's something I'm never probably going to fully get behind. Number 5, struggling franchises have little to lose by experimenting. Sure, great. It's about making better decisions. If this helps you make better decisions to win games, sure. But if it stunts the growth of your players, then that could end up being a negative than a positive. So that's a balance. We're going to have to figure out which one is better. And then 6, players raised in the system already, the trend may be inevitable. So like guys who've just had their pitches called all the way through, guys who are in college, the pitches called all the way through, and then they get to the big leagues in 6 months because they're really good. Maybe it's an easier way to transition them in without having to culture shock them. Like, you're in the big leagues and you have to figure out how to call a game. It can transition them in better. I agree with that. But like, those aren't the strongest pros, in my opinion. They're not. 2 of them are kind of the same. But then there's cons, as there always are. And here's some of the arguments against. Catchers read swings, body language, and pitcher feel in real time. The dugout can't. Yes. The catcher knows what pitch is working, not moving the same way, or whether or not that pitcher is confident in it better than the dugout will. They just will. They're supposed to be best friends. So you could be like, just keep throwing the slider. And the guy could be like, I don't have a slider today. That could become an issue really quickly, especially if it's being dictated and it's not a two-way street. It needs to be a two-way street. The batter relationship involves managing emotions and rhythm, not just data. Yes, there are intangibles. There is a connection. There is trust. And if something is happening where the pitcher isn't fully understanding where the information from the catcher is coming from, if there's a disconnect that happens in mid-game, there's a very few ways to fix that in the middle of an inning. You have to be tight going into a game. Tight. Everyone has to know what's going to happen. And if there's any confusion, fixing that confusion with all the new rule changes is going to be next to impossible. Number 3, the optimal pitch is useless if the pitcher can't execute at the moment. Again, the feel. We got to know if they're executing or not. Only the catcher really knows how well it's being executed, and the pitcher. They need to be able to be like, this isn't working, let's fix it from pitch to pitch, and they need the trust of the dugout to do that. So it remains to be seen if that would be something that would happen. I feel like this could become an issue. It's one of those things that too many cooks in the kitchen could become a problem very quickly. 3, the pitch clock makes dugout to mound communication impractical. That's true. That stinks. The pitch clock just makes it so you can't talk to them. You have to. It always has to go through the catcher anyway. So what are we really taking from the catcher if they're just a middleman now? Like, that might make things more confusing. Minor league implementation creates catchers who never learn to call games. Yes, if they're doing this in the minors, when are they going to learn to do it? Right? Like, if we do it all the way through the minors, because if it happens in the big leagues, if you're not doing it in the minors, then you just do it in the big leagues. That's weird. So like, you don't want to have to go back and forth. You want it to be the same all the way through. So if they're doing that in the minors, at what point exactly are they going to learn to call their own games? If that's what you want. And then if you get a guy who never learns to flex that muscle, and then he goes to another organization that doesn't call all the pitches, that person is going to have a steep learning curve, and it could hurt their career. And then the last thing, elite game callers are a competitive edge that you'd be voluntarily surrendering. Yes. Some catchers are just better at it than others, and it's a skill gap thing. If we're just like making all the catchers generic, and then now it's about your talent in your dugout, not your talent on the field, that feels a little bit not great either. And the players are supposed to be able to have a lot of ways to separate themselves and make themselves valuable. And if we just start shaving those things off and taking them away from them, like we already have ABS, framing's going to start going away. So now they don't get a frame and they don't get a pitch call. If they don't hit, then what's the point? They're just basically a backstop. So that's the danger. And I agree with all those things. And this is really interesting. So like, I think it's just situational. I think it comes down to what is the situation, and is the goal to eventually not have to do this because we're on such a good on the same page? If that's the case, if shaking is always at the end of the day, you still have veto powers at all times as a pitcher, and then you can be wrong, but at least you know that two people agree as opposed to him just kind of coming up with it. If you trust it, you're more likely to trust the pitch you're throwing. That might be a net positive, but eventually at the end of the day, you have to be confident in your own decision, or you're just not going to be a good pitcher. It's just at the end of the day, you can't just be dictated to all the time. So how does it play out? What's the situation? That matters a lot, and that comes up when you look at who is for and who against. So here's a few guys. Here's how it kind of buckets, okay? The people who are open to it, like Tony Vitello, Buster Posey, basically everyone in the Marlins organization. Alan Leakman, who was the guy with the Marlins who did the pitch calling, he's now with the Rockies, he's open to it. Patrick Bailey, everyone says it's surprising that he was like, oh, whatever wins this games, but that's just what players say, right? I'm sure he's like, hey man, I believe I'm really good at this, and I believe that someday it will be my job, but like, I'm not gonna rock the boat here and be like, nah, I wanna do it because I don't wanna do that. But then there's traditionalists, there's other managers like, I don't think we need to do that. And that's like Stephen Vogt. What was he? He was a catcher. Stephen Vogt with the Guardians. But again, he's got Hedges and he's got Bo Naylor. He trusts the heck out of those guys. That's the point. They built that trust on purpose. They're already there. They don't need to implement something like this because they think they make good decisions. Skip Schumacher, Matt Quattro, or Quattro as I call him, and Dan Wilson, also an ex-catcher. But Matt Quatraro has who? Salvi Perez, right? Skip Schumacher. He had Jonah Heim, or would have had Jonah Heim, but like it really depends on who's back there. But it comes down to like also who are your pitchers? Jacob deGrom, Nady Eovaldi. You're not telling them what to throw. They're going to shake anyways. So what's the point of you dictating it? But it turns out that the people who are against it usually have pretty good situations going on. But the people who are like, it's nuanced, situational, is like Buster Posey, like Torey Lovullo, Terry Francona, they're open to it. If they needed to do it, they would do it. If we need to put a young guy in a situation to learn, but us still be relatively successful at the beginning, then we'll do it. It makes sense to do it. That is the situation where it makes sense. But if not, we got to be really careful about how we do this. This cannot be, once again, this cannot be a manager dictating what is happening on the field. But you'd be crazy to not be open to some sort of system that helps you at least participate in that process or remind the battery that you have out there what we talked about before the game started. If you're able to do that, I think it is net positive because you can avoid that like push the young guys, two of them out into the deep end and watch them flounder for 6 months and have your team and just suck, right? And then maybe never figure it out. I think there's a middle ground there, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see because I think it depends on who is making the decision. Is it a group effort in the dugout or is it one guy? Is it like the game plan that you all came up together so you guys are already on the same page and you're just there to remind them of the plan? And then if they want, they're like, hey, we see something, we're making an adjustment. And they can make that conversation and the dugout's like, all right, hands off, or we're gonna bring hands on the wheel, we're gonna help you out. It's a, do you need us or do you not need us situation? If that's the way it's operated, I think that could work in very specific situations to help young guys be successful quickly so that they can get in the process, they can get going, and then that team can not go through those growing pains because I experienced these growing pains. I had no idea what I was doing. And I was kind of guess and check. And that felt a little bit lonely, like you're on an island. But again, you can take. Not everyone is so good at like asking questions and like being really comfortable right away. So if that's what you need, if you need to put the training wheels on, but those training wheels are going to come off someday, I don't see any reason why you can't try it. So I'm all about innovation, but I am concerned if they don't do it in the minors. If they're doing it in the minors, when are they ever going to learn to not do it? Is that the long-term goal? Is this a means to an end, or is it a mechanic that we can employ in certain situations? That has remained to be seen. It's going to be interesting because I bet you the Giants and the Marlins are not the only two teams that are going to try it this year. Don't be surprised if we see the Rockies do it because they struggle to prevent runs. They need a lot of help, but it's fascinating, especially when it comes to the ABS. So who gets to make the decisions? Are the ABS decisions also going to come from the dugout when a young guy's pitching? Is that going to be tied in or not? Or are we going to just do the sales system and just say, catchers, you got this, but we're going to help you with the game planning so that you can take over the challenges? It's going to be really cool to see it play out because it's these new mechanics that are going to be a new way to play the game, and it's an interesting, like, subtle strategy situation. Holding on to these things when you make decisions, when you don't, you can get really. I think it'll be really fun, and it'll take us back to people maybe aren't seeing it this way the same way as me, but it might take us back full circle back to a little bit more of a traditional feel as these little decisions can affect the big game, and they're kind of going on behind the scenes, but they may bring just a couple more wins to a team, and that can be the difference between the playoffs and missing them. So if we're out here to guide the game and not dictate, I think it's totally worth exploring, but it's also just as likely that it go the way of the opener and be a failed experiment, because the opener is indeed a stupid failed experiment. Thank God we're done with that. All right, before I move on to the news, I have one thing to tell you, and that was actually a lie. I just lied right to your face. The boys actually have something to tell you. Be back in a minute.
All right, we got the Warby Parkers. I got the Raiders, but one thing I upgraded to, polarized. Sorry about it.
Yeah, these are good, not only for wearing, but also out in the sun. When I become that baseball coach, I always want to be with my kids. I got the Hatchers. They're darker, a little bit wider for my face. They fit perfect. They're comfortable. It's an easy process to order these really, really cool glasses.
I am a diehard Warby Parker fan. I do have prescription glasses, and I wear Warby Parker every day for many years. I'm excited about this one. Give it a shot. Warby Parker gives you quality and better looking prescription eyewear at a fraction of the going price. Our listeners get 15% off plus free shipping when they buy 2 or more pairs of prescription glasses at warbyparker.com/foul. That's 15% off when you buy 2 pairs of glasses at warbyparker.com/foul. After you purchase, they will ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them Foul Territory sent you.
Our listeners get 15% off plus free shipping when you buy 2 or more pairs of prescription glasses at warbyparker.com/foul. That is FOUL. Using our link helps support the show. Hashtag Warby Parker, hashtag ad. Love saying that live. Check it out if you don't already. Glasses are cool. All right, couple quick pieces of housekeeping before we move forward. Let's check out those real quick. All right, I mentioned before, I'm going to mention again, there are 2 or more bonus videos over at IamTrevorMay.com. It is our support system if you want to support my show directly, just for $5 a month or $50 for a year. You can get those 2 bonus videos. You can sign up for the newsletter. It is absolutely free. It keeps you updated on everything that we are talking about here, everything we're making over here, and other articles that we're using in our videos, and things we think you should read either way about the news going on around baseball. Check it out. Just put up my conversation with head coach of Georgia baseball, Wes Johnson. We talked about the gap between college and Major League Baseball closing. We talked about his thoughts on Tony Vitello taking over for the Giants manager role, and a bunch of other cool stuff around the pitching world and like technology advances. It's really fun. Go check it out. Also, if you ever miss a show, you can catch all the highlights over at More Mayday. If you're not subscribed to that channel, what are you doing? Thank you. All right, let's move on to the news. It's time for the news. It's the news time. Time for the news. A lot of news, with the biggest news coming from the Major League Baseball Players Association, or MLBPA for short. Tony Clark, the director, resigns unexpectedly after it was reported that he had an inappropriate relationship with his sister-in-law, who was hired by the PA in 2023. Executive Director Tony Clark resigned on Tuesday after an internal investigation about an inappropriate relationship. Now, it is unclear on whether if it's his wife's sister or his brother's wife. I'll be honest, doesn't really matter. Neither one great. But if you'll remember, last June, it was reported that he was under investigation, or at least the subject of a probe into by federal investigators, the Department of Justice, the Eastern District of New York, for his handling of union finances with some licensing deals. The details of that are ongoing. It is ongoing investigation. That is basically all we really know. But because that probe was happening, this internal problem surfaced. And on Friday, after Clark was interviewed as part of the review, and over the weekend, the members of the MLBPA's player subcommittee, executive subcommittee. As you know, there's 8 players that make up these eight spots in the subcommittee. They make a lot of decisions. They're the ones in the room during the negotiations for the CBA, and they make a lot of decisions on behalf of all the players. On Monday, they decided to ask him to resign, and he complied with that. So Clark's former position could be now. We don't know what's going to happen from now on, right? We don't know who's going to take over. He is kind of the face, the masthead, if you will, or the tip of the flying V. I use that metaphor quite a bit. Kind of leading us through, especially going into this year, conversations with the league about the upcoming CBA negotiations. They were actually scheduled on Monday to do their first meeting with the Cleveland Guardians. They had to cancel it unexpectedly. Those meetings are always before the day starts, so it's a really early morning, and then they all got told like right before, so all the players left, which sucks. But obviously the biggest thing that sucks is losing the guy that was supposed to lead you into these negotiations. So this is pretty awful timing, because they were about to start giving all of the details about how this negotiation is about to roll out, and these negotiations are going to be happening all through the summer. We've talked a lot on this channel and on this show about how important these decisions or these discussions are going to be moving forward. We have a salary cap being thrown out there, and to lose the strongest proponent for not having salary cap unexpectedly right now does not bode well, at least for cohesiveness, or at least for direction moving forward, because he's the director. Okay, so who takes over now? That's the big question. Like, okay, he's out. Who's up next? Now, the running, I think, guess or consensus around those familiar with the matter is probably Deputy Director Bruce Meyer, who is the lead negotiator. He is a lawyer. You probably have never seen him talk much publicly. That is not his role. That is not his strong suit. And that is a lot of what Tony brought to the table, is his ability to communicate to the players and to the public about what we valued as players, and what we need, and what is actually happening on the other side. So to lose the orator side, because a lot of times these partnerships are, one side knows the nuts and bolts really well, one side is very good at communicating, and then you have them both pair up. That is the way these two have operated together for the last over 10 years. And that is kind of why it worked. So now Bruce Meyer is very likely going to be the interim director, as he is the one fully prepared to do the negotiation anyways. He's going to be on the negotiation. Getting rid of him right now would be really not a great, it'd be probably just catastrophic. We can't have that. So Bruce Meyer will likely take over, but whether or not that's in an interim role long term, we don't know. And outside of him, it's unclear if there's an outside party that's not part of the PA, or if there's someone else internally that would like the job, but it is kind of a big responsibility right out of the gate. So not a great place to be right now. Bruce Meyer also coincidentally on Tuesday was calling a bunch of agents. There's a lot of that happening, right? Player agents are part of this conversation as well. And he was trying to firm up his support to take over at least in an interim role, according to the Athletics, Evan Drellick, Kevin Rosenthal, and Andy McCullough. But there's been a lot of statements put out, and we're going to quickly touch on them, and I'll bring them up on the screen here so we can see what they say. The official statement from the MLBPA. The Major League Baseball Players Association, MLBPA, announced today Tony Clark has resigned as executive director. Clark joined the MLBPA as a staff as director of player relations in 2010 and succeeded Michael Weiner as executive director in 2013. He was the first former player to serve in the role. Usually it is more of a labor lawyer type, like Bruce Meyer. Bruce Meyer profession is usually who leads the PA, and most PAs have somebody like that. So it's interesting to see if that's what's going to happen move forward. Full executive board of player representatives, that is the 8-person subcommittee, met this afternoon with MLBPA staff to outside counsel to discuss next steps. As always, the players remain focused on their ongoing preparations, collective bargaining this year. The strength of the union is and always will be the solidarity of our membership, so on and so forth. We're going to get through this as best we can, okay? Now, since then, there's been a lot of public comments from a lot of the PA members, specifically on the 8-person subcommittee. Marcus Simeon, he's an association player rep. Every team has a player rep, by the way. So each team has a player rep. It is actually, just so you know, for the Mets, it was Brandon Nimmo for a long time. Nimmo has moved on, but Marcus Simeon was the rep for the Rangers. I wouldn't be surprised if they just flip-flopped. So he is now the rep for the team. He is one of the 30 reps for the teams. I think we owe it as subcommittee members to speak to all the team representatives. He is also on the subcommittee very clearly. This came out with no discussion at all with the reps. We have 30 other team reps that are seeing this news. It's hard to process now. There will be a lot more conversations in a year when we have a CBA that's expiring in December. So, next steps, we've got to talk to everybody. Duh, that makes a lot of sense to me. Chris Bassett, also a player rep. I feel like we've made mistakes in the past by making rush decisions. Let's take it one step at a time. The executive subcommittee and all the reps agreed we want to get this right. We don't want to get this done just because there's a void. I would think we would have this wrapped up within 24 hours, but at the end of the day, I believe that making sure 1,200 plus players have a true opinion on this, true understanding of everything we know is more important than filling it as soon as possible. You're going to see a theme here. Everyone wants to just do it right, make sure they have the right person, and not just try to fill a void because it feels like you're unstable. But as you can imagine, we are nowhere close to being able to make a cogent argument about what we want the CBA to look like as players. If I'm a player, currently I'm not, but I'm imagining if I were, that is what I would assume. We're not close there. We're going to figure this out first, but we're going to try to trudge forward just with one chair vacant, okay? Brent Suter, we're not going to get the search going beginning here. We're going to have an interim and keep interim, that is probably interim director was what he means, and keep everything as stable as we can this year. The ship is strong. Let me tell you, the ship is strong. Yeah, Brent, that's such a Brent Suter thing to say. We just need to make the right decisions today, and moving forward, we'll be just fine. I don't know about you guys, but I feel good about it. Tarek Skubal, he's got a lot of clout too, as you can imagine. I don't think this is an impact on negotiation. Bruce Meyer has been our lead negotiator. He's still going to be it. He's done it in the past, although Tony Clark has been the face of the PA in terms of negotiation. He is still confident as ever in Bruce and everyone else that we've got behind him. So, as far as I know, we got the guys we need. And then Pete Fairbanks kind of pulls no punches and says there's people that like Tony, there are people that don't like Tony. But as a whole, we are now comparatively to where we were 10 years ago. It is a much better spot. Dealing with this will be its own separate entity in terms of where it goes and what it does for Tony Clark in people's estimations. But he's been a steadfast voice and been fighting for players for some time now. I don't think we should discredit that. And I don't either. I agree with that. But is that enough? Is this void going to really hurt negotiations? As of right now, I'm going to say yes. This is something that they need to figure out sooner rather than later. This is something that can't sit there and be fiddle-faddled around for too long. They do need strong leadership moving forward. And arguably, there's been talks that the leadership wasn't as strong as the players would want it to be anyways. So if that's the case, then maybe if they can find the right person and find them quickly, this could end up being a net positive. I mean, it's an opportunity. There was rumblings of discontent and not being super happy with Tony in the past. So we'll have to wait and see on how quickly they want to address this. But it's going to be an ongoing situation that we are going to follow very closely. But I hope they can at least be on the same page from the player standpoint. Because at the end of the day, if all the players step up and take it upon themselves to be as educated about how this whole process is going to work and have their voices heard and participate, then who your director is does not matter as much. And so there is there is a slight ability to fill that gap, and I think the players couldn't do it with the guys they have now. But it's going to be interesting to see who kind of emerges as someone who wants to take the reins and wants the job, because it is a job that is not necessarily the most. You don't get the most love if you don't execute things. So, what do you think? I want to know what you guys think. What's going to happen, and what does this mean? Because it's going to be a really interesting year. It already was, but now it's going to be more interesting. Okay, moving on to more news. Let's talk about some spring storylines. These are the things that are happening around the league, and these are the stories we are following closely in spring training. First up, Twins. As if they could take any more punches to the face, ace Pablo Lopez suffered a torn UCL during the Minnesota Twins' first squad workout on Monday and will likely miss the entire season and need Tommy John. Jesus. That was reported by new GM Jeremy Zoll. And he told reporters on Tuesday Lopez was also scheduled to pitch for Team Venezuela, who has a very promising team, and I'm very highly rating them in the WBC. Also missing a guy who put up a 2.74 ERA in 14 starts last season. But it looks like Mr. Lopez will probably not be pitching for the Twins anytime soon. It is not a coincidence either that he missed half the season last year with a ongoing shoulder tendonitis and fatigue injury. Sometimes when your shoulder is not behaving the way you want it to, the elbow can take on more stress. So you would be blown away how common it is to be dealing with a back or a shoulder or some other injury, and then as soon as you get healthy and you start to ramp things up to back to max effort, that the elbow decides that it's time for it to take a year off. So sorry, I hate to hear that. The same thing happened to me in spring training. That's a big blow for the Twins. And he was a guy they were going to need if they were going to move forward from the really tough second half of the season from last year. Bryce Harper spoke to the media quite a bit in the first week, and he said on Sunday, "It's kind of wild to me still that the president of baseball operations, Dave Dombrowski, suggested in October that the two-time National League MVP may no longer be an elite player." Now, you may remember this happened right after they were eliminated. Dave Dombrowski has a history of motivating players in this way. Now, the quote, if you really, really look into it, doesn't seem to be that direct of a dig. It's basically like, hey, I think he would say he didn't have the season that he wanted to have. Is he a top 10 player? He would say that wasn't a top 10 season. And he did have the lowest batting average he had since 2019 with 261. He had an 844 OPS, which by all counts is still very, very good, but it's a weak season for him. And he missed significant time. He had a wrist injury. If you have a nagging wrist injury, that could really hurt your ability to produce in that year. So he had something that was bothering him all year. But he said, I thought it was wild that he came at me like that. I don't need to be motivated that way. This isn't a way that motivates me. I don't need someone to say, hey, I'm saying you're not very good. I don't need to prove you that I'm very good. I proved it a lot. I'm going to continue to prove it. It just doesn't work that way for me. It felt a little bit more disrespectful. He didn't say that. He didn't say those words. But if I could extrapolate off of some body language as possible, look at his face, he wasn't too happy with it either. But maybe that isn't working. Maybe Dombrowski's onto something. Dombrowski is an old school guy. He does get the best of his players. This is a tactic he's employed in the past, and he did it again. But it is interesting to see him do that, especially when the guy is your franchise player and he has 6 more years left on his $330 million 13-year deal. That's crazy. I forgot about that. But Bryce Harper, will it work? I think for the sake of baseball, let's all hope so. Steve Cohen says there will never be a captain while he is the owner of the Mets. Mets owner Steve Cohen said Monday that he will never name a captain as long as he's in charge, ending speculation that the franchise would one day give the position to Francisco Lindor. Mic drop. Okay, so this could mean a lot of things. Of course, it's the Mets, so let's turn it down 2 notches because you probably not that big of a deal. But the quote goes as follows: "As long as I'm owning the team," says Steve, says Cohen, "there will never be a team captain. That was my decision. My view is the locker room is unique. Let the locker room sort that out year in, year out." So basically, he's just saying, I'm not going to tell you to make a captain, and if the captain needs to be, if I need to sign off on it, then let's just not do one. That makes sense. And remember, there's been a lot of rumblings about clubhouse things. So if you bequeath the leader of the clubhouse to a guy, and then he gets it for as long as he's playing, there will likely come a time where someone else, a younger guy, is probably the captain, but the person with the C on their jersey is still there. That also could cause its own problems. We don't need to create a bunch of hierarchy things in the clubhouse that already exist, and he is right. And guess what? I'll tell you right now, knowing Francisco Lindor, he does not care. People might want him to, but he really, it is just a C on the chest. At the end of the day, everyone knows who they go to when they need things. Everyone knows who they look to be their leader. And that's the same regardless. So I actually think this is a good move just to get it out there, be like, we're not going to worry about this anymore. It doesn't matter. We don't need to be the Yankees. The Yankees are the only team that does it. So like, just because we're New York, we have to have a captain? Now, they've had captain, they've had Keith Hernandez, they had Gary Carter, John Franco, David Wright was for a bit. Now, great. Those are all homegrown guys. Awesome. I don't actually think Keith Hernandez was, but the other guys were. Like, awesome. They were there for over a decade. That made all the sense in the world, and maybe that was what they needed at the time. They just don't need it now. So him saying that, I don't think is a big deal. And remember, they just changed their entire core of their team. They just swapped 7 guys for 7 guys. Like, if you have captains and you can't really do that, and you got to like stick to this, don't pigeonhole yourself. Make sure, give yourself an opportunity to change everything on a moment's notice. I like it. I like it. So, was it out of left field? A little bit, but do I agree? I do. And our last little piece of news. Walker Buehler signs a minor league deal with the Padres. A little bit surprising to a lot of people, myself included. I think Walker would, especially if his stuff really isn't going to come back from his Tommy John surgery, maybe throwing him out in the bullpen could be the next step. He still wants to start. Maybe that's something that changes in the future, but signing a minor league deal was not something I anticipated, but he signed it with the San Diego Padres, which is interesting because he started his career with the LA Dodgers for 8 years. And when he addressed reporters on Tuesday, he said, yeah, it feels a little bit weird. I imagine 5 years ago it would have felt a lot more weird, but this is a crazy game. This is a great opportunity for me. I like that. I like that take. Buehler struggled with the Boston Red Sox last season and released in August before signing with the Philadelphia Phillies for September. He is a couple years removed from that Tommy John surgery that kind of had a lot of complications. It took him a long time to get back from. And his stuff has not returned to elite levels that it was before surgery. But possibly, I'm throwing this out here. Walker, be open to going to the pen. It is fun. I think you'll enjoy it. I think you got this to make it next level. All right, that is the news. Those are the stories we have to talk about. So let's get quickly into May-splaining. Who won the offseason? What teams had the best off-seasons based on adding, subtracting, how they assembled their roster, and who do I think is going to put themselves in a good position to be successful again this year? There are probably some surprises on this list. Honestly, for the first time in a long time, the top 5 were really hard for me to do. So let's hop right into it. It's going to be a little subtle. There's going to be some big signings, some small signings, but you'll see as we go. All right, we're going to start with an honorable mention. I only have one this time. Honorable mention. A lot of you might not see this coming, is the Texas Rangers, as they made a lot of lateral moves, in my opinion, that just filled the holes a little bit better than they were filled before. So they had some gaps. They needed to fill in those gaps. For example, outfield help. They went and got Brandon Nimmo, and they swapped a similar contract in Marcus Semien. Marcus Semien, who had struggled the last couple of years there, it was just a change that needed to be made, and they got a position that they needed more for similar money. So nothing really changed there. They just now have a person playing in a position that they need a little bit better. They made a savvy trade for Mackenzie Gore, in my opinion. Mackenzie Gore is potentially a front-end starter who is now flanked by 2 very veteran pitchers in Eovaldi and in DeGrom. I like those 2 guys, but they're old, and they need young talent. And Mackenzie Gore is maybe one of the big up-and-comers in terms of pitching talent. I think he's going to fit in there, and they needed starting pitching help. They lost Patrick Corbin, John Gray, Adolis Garcia, Marcus Semien. A lot of the guys that were kind of their core, they're shaking up their core a little bit. They lost a bunch of their bullpen depth in Phil Maton, Obi Milner, and Sean Armstrong, and then they just flipped it around and got a bunch more bullpen depth, and I liked it. Chris Martin, Alexis Diaz, Jacob Junis, and Tyler Alexander. Basically just let's fill it up with guys who've done it in the past, and we have options out there left and right. So I think they filled up their holes a little bit better. I mean, they still need a bat, but I think that they were some fairly savvy moves with the Mackenzie Gore thing. Okay, number 10. It is your Philadelphia Phillies, staying exactly the same. I am a fan of them saying, let's go one more time. Let's give it one more shot. Let's run it back one more time with this core, because we still have some studs that may be at the very back end, but they might have one more year in them. Zach Wheeler should be back early. Christopher Sanchez has turned into a bona fide ace. Aaron Nola, it does the good year, bad year thing. He had a tough year last year. We can expect him to have a good year this year. That's a good first three. We have good starting pitching. We got Andy Painter coming. They got some young talent coming up too. Middle infielder help. Bryson Stott maybe could play some outfield. They could figure out without Alec Boehm. Just give him one more shot. And they brought Kyle Schwarber back, and they brought their quarterback back in JT Realmuto. I like that they're let's just do it again. We were winning one series away from making a run. Had they beat the Dodgers last year in the division series, I think they would have had a very good chance to win the whole thing. Watching the Phillies play the Blue Jays would have been really fun too, I think. So, you have it. You're just a couple series away from doing it. They've been one of the most complete teams in the league a couple years in a row. They won the division. This is a playoff team. And as we all know, it's about getting there. And I think with this group, they can get there. And I think they believe that too. And I think that was smart. So they're my number 10. Number 9. Boop. Number 9. I cannot believe this is happening. The Pittsburgh Pirates. Can I get some angel music played here, editor? Let's just imagine there's some angels singing a chorus. Yes, Pittsburgh Pirates, I think they made some savvy moves. They got some veteran guys who can swing the bat a little bit. They traded for Brandon Lowe. I love it. Guys hit 30 home runs 3 years in a row. Ryan O'Hearn, very quality first baseman. Again, no pop at the corners. They struggle with this. They struggle with it every year in a park that should have a lot of homers in it. So maybe this takes some pressure off O'Neal Cruz. He can make contact a little. He takes another step forward, and now we're cooking. Now we're cooking with gas. Okay? They added Gregory Soto in the pen. They added Mason Montgomery in the trade for Lau. Mason Montgomery struggled really mightily down the stretch last year, but that guy throws 100 and he's left-handed. There's something in there. If we can unlock it, because their pitching seems to be doing a good job there. Another guy throws 100, Adam. I think it's solid. And the only guys they lost that were major contributors to the big league team in the recent past are Colin Holderman and Johan Oviedo. They still have Mitch Keller. Jones come back. Bubba Chandler's there. They got Connor Griffin just waiting in the wings. He's right there. He's 19. Honestly, he's not going to be the savior right away, but the kid's a stud. they got Paul Skeens. Come on. I like it. I think, they've tried a couple times they tried for Josh Naylor. Oh, and they also got Marcell of the Braves. Marcell Ozuna of the Braves, which is awesome. Now we'll see what he does, but that's a DH right there. Now I don't know if Andy McCutcheon comes back now, but I like what the Pirates are doing. I like their attitude. I like it. Number 8. Hop right in. The Chicago Cubs. Now they are running it back quite a bit with the addition of this gentleman, Alex Bregman, playing third base. We'll see what Matt Shaw does now, but they got Edward Cabrera. So they added a starting pitcher, maybe not an ace, but maybe a front 3 guy, maybe a 3 guy, to add to Matt Boyd and Jameson Taillon and Shotei Minaga. Justin Steele will be back at some point. There's more depth there. It's very similar depth. They're quality pitchers who are going to throw quality games. They scored a ton of runs last year, and they're losing Kyle Tucker. So it's kind of a swap it over. Hopefully he produces that bat for them, and they just continue to have that top 5 NL offense, and they run it back again with a little bit more pitching depth. And then they added some bullpen depth as well. They added Phil Maton. That's a different. Actually, no, they did. They added Phil Maton, Hunter Harvey, Jacob Webb, Obi Milner, and Shelby Miller. So they added a bunch of guys who have thrown and leveraged in the past. We can see where it shifts out now. We'll shuffle those pieces. We'll see who stays healthy. But that's a lot of value. There's a lot of quality they can get out of that. Something they struggled with last year. Yeah, they lost Brad Keller and Andrew Kittredge, but I think they filled with more guys in the back end. Drew Pomeranz again is gone, so is Taylor Rogers. but I think they addressed it. So I think they addressed it and they're a little bit better than they were last year. That's what we're looking for here. Number 7. I know, this one's going to be weird. The New York Mets are 7. Okay. Now, they got a lot of good players. Okay, let's do the added really quickly. They swapped their cores. We have Bo Bichette, Freddie Peralta, Louis Robert Jr., Marcus Semien, Devin Williams, Jorge Polanco, Luke Weaver, Tobias Myers, to name a few, are all joining the team, while Pete Alonso, Edwin Diaz, Brandon Nimmo, Starling Marte, Jeff McNeil, Tyler Rogers, Ryan Helsley, Gregory Soto, and Ryan Stanek are all leaving. That is quite the swap, okay? But talent-wise, arguably just as good or better is coming in than left, all right? That is hard to say when you lose that number of guys. The difference is the core. Nimmo, Alonso, McNeil, guys who've been there for a very long time. They decided that core is not going to get this job done. We need to bring in different guys. Now, what's the danger here? We don't know how well they're going to mesh, and that was the big problem last year, reportedly. And also, was the Soto-Lindor schism, was that addressed? Was it real? Doesn't seem like that's addressed by any of this stuff, but it could be. The guys put around them then make that stuff kind of tighten up a little bit. So it could be great, but it could also be not great. But I got to give it to them. They did a lot of moves. They moved a core. They changed their core while still competing the next year. That is hard to do. That is impressive. And they got Freddie Peralta. Now they got a front-end guy too. So I think they're a net better team than they were last year, even though those guys all produced. Number 6. Number 6 on this list. The Detroit Tigers. And that is basically because of Framber Valdez. So they added Framber Valdez, Justin Verlander, and Gleyber Torres back. They added Kenley Jensen to the pen, and they re-signed Kyle Finnegan. So the bullpen's a little bit better, or a little bit more veteran, and maybe a little bit better in leverage. And then they added a bona fide number 2 behind their bona fide 1A, and that is Tarek Skubal. I love Framber. I love Skubal, Framber Valdez, into Jack Flaherty or Casey Mize, depending on whoever's pitching the best, with Verlander bringing up the caboose in the 5. That's a pretty good starting rotation if everyone's healthy and everyone's throwing to their potential. Now, they've always had flexibility in their position players. Everyone's back. They're still going to throw McKinstry around and Riley Green and Kerry Carpenter and Jahmai Jones. Like, these guys are they're gonna mix and match. That's what they do. That's what they do. They're gonna run those same guys back. They're all a year older, a year more experienced. They're gonna be just as good as they were. And they only lost like Josh Foley, Paul Sewald, and Rafael Montero. They just lost a bunch of relievers that really weren't a factor down the stretch, and Chris Paddock. And they got more depth. And so I think adding Framber shot these guys up the list. Number 5. Here's my top 5. Rapid fire. Here we go. Did not expect to do this, but the Baltimore Orioles. They added Pete Alonso. Huge for them, especially Oppo Pop. He's going to hit tons of homers, and he's going to take pressure off the Adley Rutschmans and the Gunnar Hendersons. Adley Rutschman desperately needs pressure taken off him to swing the bat. I think Pete Alonso might be the guy who can do that for him most effectively and allow him to take a little bit of off his shoulders, because he's been really struggling with the bat for kind of a long time now. They added Chris Bassett. Love that pickup. They're kind of going the 2015 Royals route with the starting pitching, but they went and got more starting pitching depth. They didn't get the front end guy like I wanted them to get, but you can't win them all. They added Ryan Helsley to help in the back of the pen. They traded for Taylor Ward, who I think is going to really help in the outfield and swing the bat. Shane Baz has a very high ceiling as a starting pitcher. He's going to help out a lot. And they added Andrew Kittredge to the bullpen. So again, veteran guys, some guys with a lot of experience. You know, hopefully Helsley can put the second half of last year behind him, fix the tip, go close the games. And they only lost Grayson Rodriguez, who's been hurt a lot. Sagano, who was never going to be the option there anyways, and then Jorge Mateo. Those are the 3 guys that really had a lot of playing time for them. So they kind of just added and didn't subtract a ton, which I love. Number 4, the Boston Red Sox. I love the Boston Red Sox offseason. Ranger Suarez to that rotation behind Crochet. Up there with Framber behind Tarek. I like that a lot. I think it's a great addition. And then Sonny Gray, who had a really good year last year, in at the 3. That's a pretty good 1-2-3. Though there is some volatility there. We don't know what we're going to get with maybe the third guy there, per se. But Brian Bayo at the back, like now we're cooking. They even got Johan Oviedo, who is improving, to throw in the 5 spot. So they have starting pitching depth, something they've struggled in the past. Then also add Caleb Durbin to the deal, and IKF. Now everyone's like, IKF's their third baseman. Caleb Durbin also played a lot of third base. What I hear is versatility. Two guys can play all the infield positions in IKF's situation, the outfield as well. So, do we have flexibility in the outfield now? We do. I like these pickups. I think they're a more complete team, and I think they're just going to be better, man. Yes, they lost Alex Bregman. Yes, they lost Dick Fitz. Yes, they lost Dustin May. Yes, they lost Hunter Dobbins. But outside of Bregman, he was the big producer, and they went and got Wilson Contreras to play first base as well. I like the trades they made. I think Craig Breslow did a good job. I think it's a more complete team than it's going to be, and I think they're more likely to be able to handle any injuries that happen. Number three, the Seattle Mariners. I love these guys' moves they made. They kept Josh Naylor, huge. They added Brendan Donovan, huge. Brendan Donovan leads off, put Josh Naylor in the 4-hole, and watch Cal and Julio go crazy with two guys who just don't strike out on the flanks. They desperately needed a guy who just is very hard to strike out, who plays solid defense and is can just put the bat on the ball and be a left-handed stick in Brendan Donovan. They went and got him. I love it. I love it so much. I think those are the perfect pieces to help these guys out. Now, we'll see what happens with third base and how we're going to handle that. It's probably going to be a whole lot of him and Cole Young maybe playing second. We'll see. We'll see what Cole Young, what step he takes forward. But I think that the projection for the two guys who are going to drive this offense are there already, and then they have their starting rotation still. They still have all their starting rotation, who I just would not bet against. And they lost to Jorge Polanco and Suarez, who did not hit very well while he was a Mariner, though he is beloved. Then, number two, who is it? It's the Los Angeles Dodgers. They're not number one. Let's all cheer together. The Los Angeles Dodgers. They are number two because, frankly, they got the best relief pitcher on the market and the best position player on the market. They got the two big guys, okay? And if those guys pay off, they're going to pay off big time, right? We struggled with who's closing games at the end of the year, especially in the playoffs. Roki Sasaki is going to start this year, so we didn't know he's going to close. Who knows what's going to happen? Tanner Scott. So like, hey, let's go get the guy who's good no matter what all the time. Edwin Diaz, let's go get him. They got him. And then Kyle Tucker. We all know what Kyle Tucker did. He signed. Okay, but that's really all they did. They re-signed Miggy Rowe. They re-signed Kike Hernandez. They re-signed Evan Phillips. Classic. Those three guys got it. Good, by the way. Good for them. I'm happy for them. And they lost Kirby Yates, Michael Kopech, Tony Gonsolin, and Michael Conforto. Lost some bullpen guys, added some bullpen guys. They always get the best out of their bullpen, and they got a proven closer and then a proven stud to be their sixth MVP. Incredible. But is it as good as the number one team? No. The team they beat in the World Series, I think. Number one is your Toronto Blue Jays. They added Dylan Cease, who is about to have an elite defense behind him. He always pitches incredible with an elite defense. He has not had that in the last couple of years. He's going to have that this year. Dalton Varsho is going to be running stuff down like crazy in the gaps out there in center. They added Kazuma Okamoto, who I am fascinated to see how he pans out. Remember, they already have Vlad Guerrero Jr. They lost Bo Bichette, we know. But they added Cody Ponce, coming over from Korea, having the best Korean season ever. We have Tyler Rogers, who is sneaky, just incredible every single year on a 3-year deal. They added Jesus Sanchez, Chase Lee, and Elo Jimenez on some trades, some depth pieces, and who knows, Elo hits a bunch of home runs, maybe gets up there. Yeah, they lost Bassett, Sir Anthony Dominguez, and Bo Bichette, but I think they filled in a lot of those other spots, and they still have most of the rest of the team back from last year, especially the young guys. So I love to see it. I think that they filled their holes really well. I think Tyler Rogers is that sneaky one where he's going to be really, really valuable for them. I think Dylan Cease is going to be a true bona fide front of the rotation guy. I think Okamoto is going to produce because he is the more veteran of between him and Murakami, who came over from Japan. But they're my number one mostly because I think they had the best season, but also partially because I did not want to say the Dodgers because you know why. You know why. But I want to know, comments, chat, wherever it is you are watching this, what do you think? How bad are my rankings? And let me know exactly why they're bad. All right. That is our show for the day. I would like to thank my editors. That is Aaron and Ethan and David, my producers, David and Henry, for helping me put the show together, and you for being here and watching here on Foul Territory. Make sure you subscribe before you get out of here. I will be back on Friday over on Trevor May Baseball, where we do a a community version of the show where I am reading chat and I'm taking your questions and we're having a good time with it. I'm sure there'll be a lot to talk about then. But as always, don't forget, take it easy, drink your water, and watch your baseball. And I will see you next time on Mayday, right here on Foul Territory. Next week, Wednesday, or over there on Friday. I'll see you there, okay? You guys have a good one. See you, bye.